I have the engine out of my 1965 VW Beetle, and it's on an engine stand. I'm going to start the disassembly process. If you consult the Bentley manual, this is the list of items that you do to disassemble the engine. I don't need to do all of them because I only need to disassemble the cylinders and heads. I'm not going to take the case apart, but you can see it comes all the way down to remove cylinders, pistons, and so forth. So I'm going to work my way down this list for all the items that are appropriate to disassemble this motor and get it ready to install this set of big bore cylinders on it. First on the list is to remove the front tin. I've already taken the screws out, but it's this piece of sheet metal in the back. You can see in this case the fuel line goes through there. I'm going to have to remove that rubber protective grommet, but you take off that front piece of tin. Next is going to be to remove the fan belt. To loosen the fan belt, you hold the pulley with this notch and you loosen this nut like that. Then you'll notice when you take this off, there are a number of washers on here, and the number of washers that are placed in here determines how close these pulleys are together, and it determines the tightness of the belt. So you notice the other ones are stored on the outside here. These are extras in case you need to adjust the belt tension. You can put more or fewer washers in there to adjust how far the pulleys are spaced and consequently how tight the V-belt is going to be. But that gets the belt off. Next, I'm going to disconnect the wire from the coil that goes down to the distributor. I'm going to unplug the spark plug boots on both sides. And then I'm going to loosen this band clamp that you can see right here that holds the generator to this stand that's down here. Once you loosen it, then you can slide it back toward the fan housing, and then you can lift. And I'm going to have to remove the screws that hold the fan housing on, but you can remove the fan housing and the generator all as one big unit. Because the fuel line comes through here on the fan housing, I'm going to need to remove it from the fuel pump here. I'm also going to need to remove the distributor cap so this can come off with all of the wires, and I'm going to have to undo the cable from the distributor cap to the coil. That should be all the things that are holding the fan housing to the motor. This is the fan housing that came off as an entire unit. And you can see this is where it came from off the motor. It had to come straight up because the oil cooler is under there. But this is what it looks like with that fan shroud off. And the next step is going to be to remove the intake manifold. I'm going to leave the carburetor attached to it. And I have to undo bolts here on both the intake manifold and this preheater tube. Same with on this side, preheater tube and intake manifold. Take those off, and then I'll have to disconnect the fuel line and try to lift this off as an entire assembly. The intake manifold is off. I tried to be as careful as I could with these bolts. Luckily I got all of them except this one broke on me, so I'm going to have to drill and back that out with an easy out. The next step is to take off the muffler, and you can see that there are bolts here and down there on each cylinder. So they've got them in the front, those two in the front, and then in the back. I put some PB Blaster on them last night, let it soak overnight. I hope that helps, because if these break, Then I'm trying to get them out of the cylinder head, and that isn't going to be any fun, but that's going to be my next step. I have the nuts taken off of each one of these flanges. This is the front of the engine. This is the rear of the engine where the muffler, as you can see, I've got the nuts off. Next, I have to loosen these clamps. See, on this side, I've got the nut off, top and bottom, but I've got to loosen up these clamps, and then I can take the entire muffler off, and then I can get the other part of the tailpipes off of the front of the engine. I got the muffler off of this side, and so now I need to undo the screws along the bottom so that I can get this exhaust piece off, and then do that on the other side too. There's a couple of screws right there on the bottom. I got the exhaust pipe off. Now I'm going to take off that bottom piece of tin. You can see I've got a lot of cleanup to do. With that piece off, now I can take off this top piece of tin. There's a few screws holding that on. I've got the top cylinder tin off, and it exposes the heads and cylinders, and that's pretty much where I need to get to replace the cylinders. I got a lot of the grime off of it so that I can disassemble it without having all that stuff fall inside the motor.